A critical economic war has erupted between Russia, Europe, and the United States since the Russia-Ukraine war began. One side of the conflict saw Russia take its forces into Ukraine. Russia began capturing territories, and the United States and Europe imposed heavy sanctions on its economy. Russian goods were banned. Billion-dollar businesses like Mc Donalds and Zara quit the Russian markets. Russia is banned from the Swiss network. Their forex has been frozen, and the West even started forcing other nations to stop trading with Russia. Because of the opposition of the United States and the European Union, it was expected that Putin would withdraw from Ukraine and Russia would accept defeat. But that didn't happen. Even though Russia was affected, Putin played the Game of Thrones of geopolitics so well that now Europe faces an economic crisis. There has been a record high in energy inflation at 41.9%, a 10.4% increase in food inflation, and a slowdown in GDP growth in 27 countries due to Russia. You know what? The worst is still yet to come to Europe because winter is coming. Despite all the support from the United States, despite being a cluster of 27 countries, how did Europe end up in such a terrible state? What exactly is Putin's war strategy to choke Europe? We must first understand the basics of modern warfare to understand this. There are three instruments used in this war: food, finance, and energy. Looking at Europe's trade with Russia and Ukraine, you will see that Europe has done its part to choke the Russian economy. As we saw in the past 4 months when the US froze $300 billion worth of Russian foreign reserves, the EU imposed a 35% tax on Russian vodka, and Russian gold imports were banned. Many billion-dollar companies like McDonald's and Starbucks left the Russian markets. With this in mind, it was expected that the Russian economy would go bankrupt and that Putin would withdraw from the war, but although Europe was winning the financial aspect, it was getting into deep trouble on the other two fronts. If you look at food, Russia and Ukraine account for almost 30% of the global wheat exports, nearly 20% of corn exports, and more than 80% of the world's supply of sunflower oil. So the moment the supply of these commodities got cut off, the food prices in Europe started to skyrocket. As far as energy is concerned, this is where Russia's most powerful leverage against Europe comes in because, you know what, guys, in 2020? 42% of Europe's gas came from Russia, and the key to that lies in the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. This pipeline is by far one of the most critical pipelines in the world. If you look at the map, Nord Stream 1 is a 1,224-kilometer underwater gas pipeline from Vyborg in northwest Russia to northeastern Germany via the Baltic Sea. This pipeline transports 55 billion cubic meters of gas, most of which directly goes to Germany. Then from Germany, several pipelines take it to the rest of the countries in Europe, and you will see that most of these countries were and still are heavily dependent on Russian gas. So when Europe imposed sanctions on Russia, Putin did two critical things. Number one, he cut the gas supply to Europe by 60%. Secondly, he put the condition if Europe and companies wanted to buy oil and gas from Russia, they will have to purchase oil in rubles, and because of this, there were three significant implications on world trade. Number one, since Russia cut 60% supply of gas, so gas prices worldwide skyrocketed, and this was because of the supply-demand mismatch. Secondly, since Russia forced the companies to buy oil and gas with rubles, if you see, the value of the ruble started shooting up, making ruble one of the best performing currencies in the world. Industrial prices have risen more than 36% in the last 1 year, and electricity bills for the citizens of Europe are going over the roof. And on top of that, the food price inflation has accelerated. All the sanctions were meant to kill the Russian trade and prevent Russia from making money, but as it turns out, Russia made more money selling gas after the war than it did before. While Russian crude oil sales to Europe dropped by 554,000 barrels a day. Asian refiners increased their take by 503 barrels a day, becoming a one-on-one replacement for the losses between March and May. This is why Europe has constantly pressured India to stop buying Russian oil. Despite playing all these political games, the European Union is choking because winter is coming for Europe. The gas consumption in Europe decreases between February to August, but from September onwards, this consumption starts shooting up and reaches its peak in December. This is mainly because of the use of heaters and other devices due to freezing weather, and now Europe is extremely worried because if Russia stops supplying gas, it will be a nightmare for the economy and the people of Europe. Despite all the sanctions, pressure, and propaganda, Europe is still at the mercy of Russia for the winter, which is why the winter of 2022 could be the deciding round of this economic war between three of the world's most powerful entities. Thank you for watching the video. Please share your thoughts about the topic and subscribe to Learning Mavericks.